Sugar, spice, and everything not so nice? Not all pasta sauces are healthy, and here's the worst of the worst.
Nona, this tastes like yours.
Sauces that contain creamy elements usually weigh in with higher calorie and fat contents. Such is the case with the Ragù Creamy Basil Alfredo, especially concerning cholesterol. At 180 calories for a half-cup serving, the numbers are already adding up. Comparatively, a serving of Ragù Old World-style Marinara is only 80 calories. With so many calories in creamy basil Alfredo, there isn't a lot of wiggle room left for calories in the pasta, veggies, and side dishes you'll likely be enjoying along with the sauce, most of which will come with moderate to high calorie counts of their own. Looking at the fat content, 16 grams per serving is a considerable amount for a pasta topper, about 1/4 of the daily recommended intake. Combine that with 660 milligrams of sodium, also about 1/4 of the per-day allotment, and you can see why this creation isn't a prime choice from the Ragù sauce selection. A simpler sauce with better nutritional stats would leave wiggle room when it comes to the rest of your meal. Creamy basil Alfredo adds up to an unwise choice. As a premium sauce option, Raos stands above the rest, giving pasta lovers a higher-end option for dressing out their fettuccine and spaghetti. The company's red sauces are relatively favorable, but when you spin a bottle of caramelized onion sauce and check out the label, you find a different story altogether. 120 calories per half-cup serving is 20 more than a half-cup of basic marinara. It's surprising to learn that including onions in the basic recipe could add 20% more to the calorie count, and not something casual shoppers might think to double-check before putting a jar in their cart. Luckily, the 8-gram fat content and 330 milligram sodium content keep this ravioli juice from being any more unhealthy than necessary. But if adding a vegetable to the recipe jacks up the calories so considerably, it's probably better to skip the caramelized onions and stick with the ground-level red sauce instead to keep the calorie count in your whole meal under control. At the very least, you can make an informed decision before making your purchase.
Raos Homemade. Make every day delicious.
When Raos takes a step beyond the basic tomato-based sauces, the nutritional facts tell a wildly different tale. With no tomatoes in the recipe to provide volume, Raos homemade basil pesto depends on a heavy concentration of sunflower oil, pine nuts, and cheeses to create a traditional green pesto sauce. Unfortunately, this formula also takes all the questionable aspects into the realm of unmanageable. For a half-cup serving, this jar shares a gobsmacking 640 calories. This alone should give shoppers pause as they consider that number as more than a quarter of a daily 2,000-calorie diet, just for the sauce. Reading on, the 62 grams of fat and 1,960 milligrams of sodium are enough to make you put the jar back on the shelf and slide quietly away from the pasta section altogether. How could a sauce offer such high concentrations of additives that should be kept to a minimum throughout the day? Even cutting the serving in half to a quarter cup gives your pasta 320 calories, 31 grams of fat, and 980 milligrams of sodium, all without including the pasta itself. Yikes! Alfredo is a notoriously indulgent sauce that combines cream and cheese to make a silky white topping for pasta, chicken, and seafood. With Prego Homestyle Alfredo sauce piled on top, those relatively benign foods get an added blast of calories, fat, sodium, and cholesterol that can turn simple eating into a complicated affair. You can count on a half-cup serving to add 160 calories, 14 grams of fat, and 780 milligrams of sodium to your plate. If you're tracking your macros closely, that leaves you almost no space for dessert at the end of your meal. The biggest surprise in this sauce is the cholesterol count, which at 60 milligrams per serving is higher than any other sauce on the list. While it doesn't come close to the 300 total milligrams allowed per day, it does come in the form of a cream sauce, meaning whatever animal-based proteins you might add on top will only increase your consumption. You could always use less than a half cup of this Prego sauce, but you'll still be augmenting your pasta with some less than desirable elements. Something to keep in mind as you shop. With Classico basil pesto included in your home-style Italian meal, you'll be adding one of the least nutritionally impressive sauces currently on the market to your daily consumption. Toss your pasta with a half cup of this temptation and you'll be piling on 460 calories, a staggering 44 grams of fat, and 1,180 milligrams of sodium, just about half of your allowance for the whole day. It makes more sense when you find out the ingredient list includes both soybean and olive oils, but no pasta dish is worth that kind of trouble. While marinara is usually a safe choice that keeps calories low while omitting strange additives, Emerils Homestyle Marinara somehow bucks the trend to create one of the least healthy sauces on the shelf. There may only be 90 calories in a half-cup serving, but it also comes with 470 milligrams of sodium, which is 20% of the daily allowance in the sauce alone. Considering that most pasta makers generously salt the pot when making their noodles, including Emerils in the meal only adds that much more to the overall content. Another surprising ingredient making an appearance in this pasta sauce is sugar, or rather the amount of sugar. Emerils Homestyle Marinara contains a considerable 9 grams per half-cup serving. Mirroring the sodium, this is nearly 20% of what's advisable to consume in an entire day, and it's all coming in a single serving of pasta sauce. When it comes to house-label pasta sauces, Kroger does a creditable job keeping up with the bigger brands. But when the objective is to keep nutrition as a touchstone, it isn't always a good thing to follow the pack. One example in particular is Kroger Traditional Alfredo, a pasta sauce that gives other labels a run for their money in flavor and texture. As for nutritional value, the country's largest grocer also maintains a profile similar to the larger brands. Unfortunately, that means a half-cup serving showers your pasta with 140 calories, 10 grams of fat, and 20 milligrams of cholesterol. You'll also be taking 4 grams of sugar and a heart-shuddering 620 milligrams of sodium. With so many high counts of undesirable elements included in the bargain, even cost-cutting measures can't help this white sauce measure up in the right way. Target, there's a twist in the less-than-healthy pasta sauce equation with Good & Gather's signature butternut squash pasta sauce, one of the few gourmet-style recipes around, and sadly, one of the more adverse regarding nutrition. We would have thought a squash-based sauce would have fewer calories than a luscious white sauce, but a half-cup serving of this vibrant orange concoction comes up with 170 calories to make your pasta a heavier prospect. Those calories come with 13 grams of fat, 360 milligrams of sodium, and an incredible 30 milligrams of cholesterol. There are also 7 grams of sugar in the recipe, but considering everything else already listed, it's just one more reason to squash this pasta topping possibility. Where does all this unfavorable nutritional calculus stem from? Isn't butternut squash supposed to be a healthy option overall? Well, yes, when it isn't combined with light cream, cultured butter, which includes even more cream, sunflower oil, and cheese. It turns out you can take what nature gave you and turn it into a pasta sauce that's better left on the shelf. What could a food company do to mushrooms to make them into an unhealthy pasta sauce? If the formulation in question results in Hunt's mushroom sauce, the answer is plenty, and most of it has to do with salt. Though it's found a few ingredients down on the list, it still accounts for a staggering 640 milligrams in a half-cup serving, countering that phenomenal number with a modest 40 calories.
Barilla, a recipe for wonderful.
When you find a sauce that combines cream and pesto like Barilla Creamy Genovese Basil Pesto does, you can pretty much assume the nutrition facts aren't going to be favorable. The food producer takes an interesting route with its creation, adding sunflower oil and cashews to achieve a richer base than the usual pesto provides. But that also brings in 600 calories per half-cup serving. And where calories occur, fat isn't too far behind. In this case, it's 52 grams, or around 2/3 of your daily allowance. If that weren't enough to deter you from buying, there are also 10 milligrams of cholesterol and 1,520 milligrams of sodium coming along for the ride. Knowing that a single serving of a jarred pasta sauce can contain more of these elements than you should consume in one sitting makes it clear that shopping for a nutrition-forward pasta sauce is something of a challenge. But options like Barilla Classic Genovese Basil Pesto make it much easier to bypass the unhealthy ones with figures so glaringly out of whack. Rosa sauce, like Bertolli DItalia Creamy Rosa, combines white and red sauce for a recipe made to please lovers of both. This also means the good and bad nutritional qualities of both sauces share the jar. In the case of this tangy, creamy mix, a half-cup serving shows up on the plate with 100 calories, a bit higher than the average red sauce, though lower than some white sauces on the market. The 6 grams of fat aren't the worst either, considering the inclusion of Alfredo-like ingredients. But the 590 milligrams of sodium should be a deal breaker, putting around 25% of your recommended consumption into one overindulgent element of your meal. Having 2 different types of cheese plus eggs in the jar might explain the 15 milligrams of cholesterol in this sauce too. With so much working against the notion of eating for health dropped into a twofer sauce like this one, you might be happier choosing a marinara you can doctor with your own more nutritious white sauce ingredients instead.